Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm Mohamed Saleh, and with me is John Dyer. And today, we're going to dive into and pick up from where we left off last time, but really focus on open communication. In our last episode, we talked about two-way communication and information clouding and how information goes up and down the chain of command. And so today, we're going to talk about, well, what happens if that doesn't happen and people aren't open to discussing or disclosing what's going on. And so, John, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the theme of my book that I wrote, The Facade of Excellence, it's interesting because when I walk into a plant for the first time, or any business really for the first time, I can get a sense for where they are in their journey and whether it's a facade or not very quickly by looking at their communication boards. That's the first thing I always look for is, when you first walk in, there's usually some sort of a big board that has all this information on it. And the things that I look for, right, is it out of date? You'd be surprised at how many times you look at it and the charts look really beautiful. They're nice, red, green, I have all this stuff. And then you look at the dates on them and they're like 6 months old. And you're like, okay, this is a facade. They're not keeping it up. They did it at one point, but it's lost its steam. Or is the data they're displaying relevant to the business and to the employees? Can they understand it? Again, you'd be surprised at how many times you look at it, and I've got a master's in business, and there's certain things that I can't comprehend. It's like, okay, well, the inverse productivity of this production line versus this competitor is negative 4.8. What the heck does that mean? It's like, how do you put that into layman's terms or something that, anyone can understand? And then the third thing is how easy is the data to comprehend? Do they actually use a lot of graphics and red and green and yellow colors, or is it a bunch of numbers, that is hard to decipher? So that's a very strong telltale sign as to whether communications are real or something that they maybe aspired to at one point in the past and it just hasn't been kept up, or if it was fake to begin with.
Yeah.
The other one that I find interesting, and I've been guilty of this too myself, a lot of times when companies start off, they want to have some sort of a minute by minute status board that they put up, right? Like maybe a whiteboard where they segment it off by hours. And, the goal is to make this many widgets every hour.
Yeah.
And then what the team is supposed to do of employees is write down how many widgets they actually made that hour. And then what's the delta? And then the reason, if they don't hit the goal, why didn't they hit the goal? Right. So I've seen companies make this mistake over and over again. They'll put these whiteboards with all that information all over the place. And then you walk through, a month or two later, and they're all blank. Not a single one is filled in, right? Not, and you go around and you start asking people, hey, what's this board all about? And they're like, oh yeah, they put that up a few months ago. And it's like, well, why isn't it filled in? And they'll look at you like, they don't want to talk anymore. It's like
Yeah.
just because.
Mhm.
Well, the reason it's not filled in is because the feeling of the employees is that this is being used to spy on them or to punish them, right?
Scrutiny. Yeah.
Yeah, and if that's either real or even perceived, and it's more probably a perception
Yeah.
that, hey, the only reason management is putting these boards up is so that they can yell at us when we don't hit our objectives, even though they gave us bad parts, or it was a supplier that didn't supply the parts on time, or machines that break down frequently that we don't have any control over, all these different things that the employees really don't have direct control over. They still feel like they're the ones that are going to get the blame.
Yeah.
So what do? After the boards are up for a day or two, you start missing an hour here, missing an hour there, filling it in. And then when nobody says anything, you just stop filling it in altogether.
Yeah.
And then they become, paperweights. Um, so yeah, and so the bottom line to all that is when doing communications, are you doing it the right way for the right reasons with the right attitude, right? Because again, when you put up those status boards, you have to constantly keep reinforcing with the employees that, hey, we're doing this to help you. We're doing this because when we see that there's a trend of certain things that are happening, we can put resources towards that. If a machine is breaking down frequently, we can put together a preventive maintenance plan and a predictive maintenance plan, and that'll help us as a team get better. If you're not constantly reinforcing that, and the employees don't actually see action taking place, then they'll think it's all fake, and that it's insincere, and they won't fill the boards in. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
John, as you were going down and kind of giving those examples, I kind of started reflecting on some of my situations, and I put myself in those people's shoes for a second to kind of see, like, why did I react that way? Um, and there's a lot to unpack in what you just said, so I'm just going to highlight like four things that I think are key ingredients to open communication. And one of the things that you were talking about is the trust that this is going to be used to support you. And I think too many times leaders, and I'm not generalizing, um, in my experience, have assumed that there's a relationship without working on the relationship. And what's even worse sometimes is they ignite the staff or the people to speak up, and then it goes nowhere. And so, hey, we want all your ideas. They come up with 10 ideas, 20 ideas, 100 ideas, and they're not getting done.
right.
And so I think there's a thread in everything that you were saying there around trust and relationships. The other thing that you spoke of that I kind of want to highlight is there's a level of autonomy that's needed for people to feel like they have the authority to do what they need to do. And if the top is constantly scrutinizing them or telling them they need to do X, Y, and Z, then they really don't have autonomy. It's a facade. You're pretending they have autonomy, but you're still telling them what to do. And
Right.
so I feel in order to not use vulnerability and weaponize it against them as a weakness, I think that has to be addressed. And David Markowitz in the book Turning the Ship Around, he talks about how do you move authority down to the lowest possible level, and then give them the autonomy to be able to do that. And I think one of the things that motivate me at least is autonomy. And so I feel like when people their autonomy is taken away, they don't speak up anymore. um, either because they feel like their credit is being stolen or that they feel like they're robots and their intellect isn't really respected. So I feel like that's another one. The third thing, which is a can of worms if we open it up, is really around giving people clarity and purpose. And you talked a little bit about what motivates people. And I think that's another piece too, is if people aren't motivated, they're not going to really want to speak up anyway.
Right.
Like this ship is going down anyway, so why even like bother speaking up? They're not going to listen. And so if I know that if that's the case, then I'm probably not going to speak up either. And so I think looking at people's motivation and looking at people, do they have the clarity and the purpose, that they understand what their contributions are? Are they valued? So I think that's another piece to it, that when you walk around and you see outdated stuff on boards, how motivated are they? What's the relationship between them and their boss? What was the discipline with their boss around showing that support? Because if they stop showing up, then we don't need to do it. And do they feel the autonomy that they're empowered to actually do stuff like that? And that, starts the symptom that we see on our end is people are not vulnerable, people are not trusting, people have fear. And all of these things are catalysts to just kind of paralyze an organization from speaking up.
See, you're exactly right. And I mean, you could substitute gimbal walks as an example for the
Yeah.
boards, right?
Yeah.
Are you doing gimbal walks for the right reasons?
Mhm.
Are you doing them because you see that as a vehicle towards building relationships, building trust, and ultimately improving the process that
Yeah.
will allow the business to grow and thrive and be prosperous?
Mhm.
Or are you doing it to check a box,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Oh, we're going to put these information boards up because we read a book, or our CEO read a book that said sharing information is a good thing. All right, check the box.
Yep.
And then we'll keep it up for a month or two, and then it falls apart. Same for gimbal walks. Oh, a consultant said that it's important to do a gimbal walk. Okay, I'm going to put that on my calendar. You'll see how good of a leader I am. I'm going to put that on my calendar every day. I'm going to go out and walk the factory floor for 20, 30 minutes and talk to the employees and hear what their problems are. Oh, well, today I'm a little bit busy, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that today. And oh, well, it was a good thing for a week or two, but I just don't have time this month. And we got end of the quarter results coming up, and yeah, okay, we won't do the gimbal walks anymore. So it's just a check a box thing.
Yep.
So again, it's how do you get people to understand that that's a vehicle towards achieving excellence that's necessary to do, because it's all about building those relationships, building trust, getting people's input, helping them to take charge of making improvement happen,
Yeah.
and instead of just a check the box mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this in our last episode around the hierarchy and trying to flatten the hierarchy, but hierarchy kills organizations' open communication. And so when you look at it, you start questioning, are people managing process or are people managing people? Because we should be managing process. And so when you start having, 8, 9 layers, are you even managing process at that point? Or at that point, is it just people? And if you're managing people, you're going to scrutinize them, you're going to take their autonomy away. And so by flattening out the organization, not only does it improve the telephone game, but it also helps you to refocus on the purpose of the process and not the people. And you get out of blame, you get out of office politics, you get out of cherry picking and all these things. But the bigger the hierarchy is, the harder it is to have open communication.
Yeah, let me give you an example, right? So this was at the very beginning of my career. I was with General Electric. I was on their management training program where you did 4 6-month assignments, and one of those assignments had to be as a supervisor in a factory. So it was my first day to be in Burlington, Vermont, where GE had a big aerospace facility, and I was the supervisor over the gauge lab and the tool crib. And the person I was taking the place of had already left and had been gone for over a week. So I had no overlap with my successor or predecessor. And my boss went into the hospital the morning of my first day on the job and sadly passed away in the hospital and was not replaced right away. His boss came out to me, to meet me in the lobby and basically took me out to the tool crib and said, "There's your desk. This is your area that you're supervising. I'm really busy because I'm high up in the organization, so I just really don't have time. Good luck." And that was it. I mean, I kid you not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had no idea what I was doing, what the plant even did. I never, the first day, first day on the job in a strange new area. I'd never been to Burlington, Vermont before. My wife and I had just gotten married, so, new life. And I just remember thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm stuck. I don't have any idea. So out of necessity, more than anything, I pulled all the employees together. I had like, I don't know, 30 or so employees. I pulled them all together, introduced myself, and said, "I have no idea what I'm doing, and I need your help. Can you educate me on how this works? Can you help me? And I'll in turn promise to do everything I can to help you." And they told me after being there for a few months that really shocked them because no one had ever asked for their help before. No one had ever taken that approach. They had always come in and said, "You're going to do this. You're going to do it my way. We're, total control." And it was tough. It was tough. But 6 months later, they were all, and all the metrics indicated this, that the gauge lab and tool room was performing at a peak performance that they had never seen before. And again, it was because I basically asked for help and got out of their way, and then I helped them, get things done. They came up with some amazing ideas that had never been tried before. Like we would have long lines at the window, people picking up their tools, and it could be, an hour waiting in the window. And they were like, "Why don't we put the tools we know that they're going to need every day on carts and take them out to the plant areas of the plant where they're going to need the tools, and they don't even then have to come to the window?" And it was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's try that. But again, to your point, because my boss wasn't there and my boss's boss was too busy, the hierarchy was me and the employees.
Yeah.
And we were left completely alone.
Yeah.
And then building that relationship and trust, right at the beginning was, and again, it was out of necessity. It wasn't anything I knew to do, but that did teach me early in my career the importance of getting employees engaged, getting them involved, treating them with a lot of respect, building that trust, having a sense of humbleness, asking for help, not coming in with all the answers, and as a know-it-all. And it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. Let's use that same exact story and just kind of highlight a few things that wasn't, it's not what happened, but let's just look at it from a different perspective. Let's assume you did know everything about that tool crib. And you did go in there, but still operated the same way you are. Well, in that scenario, you showed servant leadership.
Right.
You show that they know more than you, which is a very hard thing for people that have technical skills to admit. And you got out of their way. All your job is to remove barriers for them and give them permission to just go change stuff under a controlled experiment. And so that's like what we inspire every leader to do. And then let's look at your boss's boss. Let's assume he or she wasn't busy, okay,
Right.
but they trusted you that you were going to be a servant leader to your people, and all they did was show up and recognize those folks for some of the great work that they're doing. I bet you probably were hitting every single number you needed to hit.
Oh yeah,
But you weren't chasing it. Like
right.
you were just trying to figure out like how do we make this like thing joyful for the employees? What ideas do they have? Let me get out of their way so they could do it. They know for a fact that they know more than you, and you're there just to support them and get out of their way. And so like I think in that scenario, you demonstrated, you flattened out the organization, you brought authority to the closest possible level, which is the employees in this scenario. You had clarity and purpose on what you needed to do, and you showed servant leadership. And so you got trust, you built a relationship out of that. So it's really everything we've been talking about.
Right. And like I said, that happened so early in my career that I've carried that with me.
Yeah.
The one thing though that always kind of sticks in the back of my mind, like I said, I was on a training program, so I knew that I was going to move on after a period of time.
Mhm.
Would my approach have been different if I was under the old paradigm of how people get promoted and recognized?
Mhm.
Right? In other words, if this was a real job for me instead of a training position,
Mhm.
would I have taken that same approach if I thought, whether real or perceived, that the only way to get ahead was to show dominance, control, use of fear, and all those negative things? Would I have learned those lessons like I did? So
Probably not.
probably not, right? I probably would have gone in, said, I'm in control. I've got to make a name for myself. We're going to do it this way, even though I have no clue what I'm doing or who any of you are. I'm your boss. You better do it my way or there's going to be trouble and you better get in line.
I just to validate what you're saying, when I first started in healthcare, I didn't know anything about healthcare. I was an engineer, and a mechanical engineer, so that says something too. And the CEO of the company, put me in as a director of continuous improvement, and to give me some experience, he assigned a few medical practices for me to oversee. They still reported to a different person, but because that person was on FMLA, I kind of came in to kind of help out manage those practices until that person came back. And then after that, it kind of spiraled and I got more that were directly reporting to me. But that first initial one I ever got, I didn't know how to manage a medical practice. I didn't know what medical assistants and nurses did and what difference they did. And I didn't know how to treat doctors and I didn't know any of that. So I was just trusting that they all knew. And all I did was empower them to make improvements because that's what I knew. When I first started, it was 16 practices. That practice became the most profitable, the most known. It became the demonstration unit. That's where they brought all the board members to kind of showcase. And when I entered that practice, they had table paper as drapes and ripped carpets and no thermometers, and they weren't heard.
Right.
And all I had to do was like, what do you need to do your job? What are the tools you need to do your job? And, how could I make your life better? Some people said, can I just have a printer? Because this one hasn't been working for 2 years and I keep walking all the way to the front. Sure, we'll get you a printer. And, people were saying, well, your expenses are going up. You're buying all these things. I was like, well, just give it time. It'll catch
Right.
up. And it
You got
did.
to have that faith. And that's the problem. Well, we'll continue this conversation of employee engagement next week.
Absolutely.
And
This
we
was
hope
great.
everybody has a great week. We'll see you then.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.